So let's move on. We're running a little behind, but that's okay. It's good discussion. So quality, our fourth topic. First point around this that, again, it's a thought that many of our government advisory team shared with us. Set the tone early. If you have the luxury that you're starting at the beginning of a project, a contract has just been signed, and you're really starting out, you have the opportunity to set expectations on everybody's part about what quality means and what will be accepted. And the rule that I found is whatever happens with those first couple of deliverables, that's what happens for the rest of the project, because the vendor sort of takes that as the benchmark. Okay, this is sort of what we can submit and have accepted, so that's what we're going to work from. So there's a real opportunity to set the tone at the level of quality and responsiveness and rigor and all the rest of it that you expect, and really have it stick for the rest of the project. And if that initial set of deliverables are not to the correct level of quality, act early. It's in everybody's best interest to move quickly, reset expectations, and make sure everybody's on the same page. This is one of those things, again, it doesn't get any better when it's not addressed quickly. So, do you have any thoughts on that, Mikhail?
I would just say that I think that is an absolute key point in making sure that the expectation documents, your DEDs, are very clear, and make sure that the people who are pulling those together and approving those know what they should be doing with them from the state side and also from the vendor side, because I think that they're absolutely critical. Okay.
So I want to talk a little bit about tools associated with the deliverable process. And you should notice there's a little placemat and a USB stick that's on every one of your seats. They're for you to take away. The USB stick has a copy of the presentation. It also has some example documents that we've been able to pull together. Example DED and a completed DED, and also a couple of example deliverable matrices, as we'll talk about in a second, to help sort of structure the deliverable review process, because they're tools that we generally find are pretty important for people. So, first question. How many people here use deliverable expectation documents on their project? Okay, most people. How many people find them effective as a tool? Much fewer. Okay, so I want somebody who finds them as an effective tool. Put the hands up again. Okay, in the back, could you talk about why you think they're effective?
They're a good way to make sure that you've got mutual agreement on what the expectations are. They're a good way to build your deliverable review checklist and to really lay out what's critical about this particular deliverable. What are the most important aspects of it, and what's going to be acceptable as an end product.
Okay. Is there someone who has experienced sort of challenges in their use that would want to share why they think they have issues? Barbara?
I think that sometimes the problem is not turning the DED into the deliverable. Finding that balance of what needs to be in a DED compared to the deliverable, and not trying to turn it into the deliverable by putting every little piece of everything in it. And I think there's an art to that.
That's a good point. Yeah. And DEDs can eat up a huge amount of time. You can spend weeks and weeks just arguing over the D&D. But I do think they're a critical tool for exactly what you said. It's setting expectations. And so it gets to sort of clarity, lack of ambiguity again, of acceptance criteria, and what do these words mean that are on the paper, so that once you get to actual deliverable review, you're on the same page still. But these really can be very, very effective tools, and in instances where we've been in sort of an oversight or IV&V kind of role, and we've seen problems occur, a lot of the time it was because either DEDs weren't used, or they were used, but they didn't really set expectations, and they weren't very explicit, so that when people sat down again, it's like, well, this isn't what I wanted. So they can be very effective tools, But again, it's about the outcome and the content, not about an administrative process that's going to eat up a lot of time. Okay. Second point is around planning for the deliverable development and review cycle. We talked a little bit earlier about committing state resources and the obligations around that and the importance of the schedule in figuring out who you have to have involved in the development and the review of these different deliverables. So somehow the schedule is a good tool to resource load and sort of say who's going to be there doing what on what day. What it isn't really, though, is an organization tool for how are you going to go about reviewing each of these deliverables. And so having some kind of a spreadsheet, and there's a couple of examples on the USB stick, that documents every deliverable, when is the draft due, when are the comments back, due back to the vendor, when is the final due, who is the review team for that deliverable, and when do they have to be reviewing. And having that put down on paper and well communicated, it's a really effective tool. And again, one of our government advisory team members made the comment that not everybody can review every deliverable, but everybody wants to review every deliverable. So that's part of the management challenge on behalf of the state, is figuring out who are the people who really have to review each of these deliverables, and how can you make sure that you've got the appropriate subject matter expertise, but you don't have everybody on the project eating up a lot of time doing deliverable review. You know, that's a challenge. But it's one of those things, again, if the vendor's doing their job, they will be holding you accountable for that process, because that's part of your commitment under the contract. So, all right, so just bringing those points together, so we talked about balancing the relationship and the contract. Yes, it's about the contract, but more it's about the day-to-day relationship and building the trust. One point we want to keep reiterating is the contract might be wrong. You know, the contract was written however many months or even years ago under a set of circumstances and with the information that people had available at the time. Maybe it's not correct. And so I think that the sign of a healthy relationship with a vendor is when you can sit down and figure out what is actually right for the project and right for the state. And if you need to change the contract, then change it. And then the final point that we talked about a little bit is rewarding honesty. You know, it can be, again, it's one of those things that you can set the tone early. If something is going wrong or there's an issue coming up and the vendor comes to you and is honest about it, that's a great opportunity to build the relationship. You know, the way that you respond to that is going to dictate how they come to you or do not come to you at any point in the future. So we've been having so much good dialogue here that we've used all of our discussion time. We were going to break out into tables, but we've been talking the whole time, so that's great. I think that's great. So I'm just going to move right into the next piece.